In this video, we want to answer the question, what does it truly mean to be a Christian? Part 2. So if you've missed part 1, we'd like for you to go and look at part 1 first as we continue the story of what it truly means to be a Christian. This is Discipleship Everywhere, a platform for discipleship vision, inspiration, and training wherever you are, whenever you need it. I was sitting down with a Christian, let's call him Jesse. Jesse and I were having a conversation, and he'd been in church for most of his life. In fact, he grew up in a Christian home. But as we were talking, one of the struggles that Jesse had was this. He kept wondering, how come, even though he's a Christian, he knows that he's born again, he knows that he's received that regenerative gift of the Holy Spirit, how come he still struggles with sin? How come it's so difficult for him to walk away from sin even today? You know, this is such an important question, a fair question. Many of us still have this struggle with sin. But if Christ came to die for our sin, and if Christ came to forgive us of our sin, and if Christ came to remove our sin from us, why is it, as Christians, we still struggle with sin? Today, I want to answer that question. And the way I often try and explain this is by using 3 jars. So what I typically do is I would use the cups that are available. We call this illustration the 3 jars, very similar to the previous video that we used 3 jars as well. Except in this video, the 3 jars are going to represent different things. In the previous video, the jars represented God, man, and Jesus. In this video, the jars are going to represent body, soul, and spirit. And so as I talk with Jesse around his struggle of why it is he feels as a Christian, he still sins. How come? What explains that? Why is it we're not free from sin? What is it that's going on? I use this to help Jesse understand what it truly means to be a Christian. You see, when God created us, he created us in his image. And what it means is this, that if God is water, then God poured water into us. Our body, our soul, and our spirit was created in the image of God. Now, what is our body? Our body is very easy to figure out. It's this earth suit that we walk around with, right? As you get older, you understand that your earth suit kind of moves a little bit more south because of gravity, kind of losing some hair, at least for me. But what about our soul? Our soul is that internal world. That has to do with our mind, the way we think, our emotions, the way we feel, and our will, the ability to make choices. Now, what about our spirit? Our spirit is also that internal world. And sometimes we recognize this by that sense of our conscience, that prickling on the inside, that sense, that sixth sense, sometimes people describe, that is this nudge that happens on the inside. That's an evidence that we all have a spirit. Now, when God created us, our body, our soul, and our spirit was created in his image, water in each of these jars. But when we sinned, we separated from God. And the illustration is this, it's the water now was filled with coffee powder. And what it means is this, is that we died in spirit, soul, and body. And therefore, it's not difficult to come to this realization, because as you think of your body is dying, right? And that's why we spend so much money to try and make sure that we look good. We put makeup, we do, whatever we need to do to look good, right? But we know that our body is dying. And that's the result of sin. But not only is our body dying, our soul is also dying. So what was once water is now coffee. And so our minds are darkened, our emotions are negative, and what was a single choice for Adam and Eve that was wrong in the garden now becomes a myriad of multiple choices that could be wrong because of sin. And so our soul dies as well, and our spirit also had died. When we put our confidence in Jesus, what happens is this, that because of what Jesus has done, he removes the coffee in our spirit, and he pours his spirit. Our spirit that was dead now comes alive. And this is the doctrine of regeneration. We, because of this, have become justified by Christ. We have been made forgiven because he has taken our sin. Now that is an instant response. We are 100% righteous in that moment when we've been regenerated. Not necessarily in the moment when we said the sinner's prayer, not necessarily when we attended church, but in that moment when we understood and we put our confidence, our faith in what Jesus had done. And because of that, we are regenerated. Our spirit now has been made new. There is water on the inside. Now, what about our soul, our mind, our emotion, and our will? Unfortunately, I wish this wasn't the case, but unfortunately, this doesn't change instantly. This is going to take a long journey of time, but it's also going to require our participation. Where we were born again, it was what Jesus has done. Where we are now being transformed, we need to participate. But here's how the change happens. Imagine this cup is filled with coffee. Now, how is the transformation going to happen? It's like this. It's like taking an ice cube and putting that ice cube in. And that ice cube is going to melt and you're not going to see much change. And then you put another piece of ice cube. And then you put another piece of ice cube. And put another piece of ice cube. And over time, what was once coffee is going to become diluted and changed. Our thinking is transformed and renewed daily. That's why Paul said this, no longer be conformed to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of the mind. How we are changed is when little by little we make new our mind by putting God's truth into our mind. And then we start shifting our emotions one ice cube at a time. We just keep putting that ice cube in. And that's how we are going to be transformed in our soul. This is going to take our lives, the rest of our lives at least, and our commitment to faithfully walk in this transformative process. This is Christ justifying us. This is us being sanctified by the work of Christ and by the Word of God. His Word is truth, and His Word sanctifies us, transforms us. And that's why it's really important as a Christian that we don't just stop here. We don't just say, I'm so grateful that I have been renewed and redeemed, and now I can have an eternity with Christ. But we also need to be committed to sanctification, to being transformed, to being changed, to being shifting from one way of thinking to another way of thinking. The big word here is the word repent. It's to change our mind. And in that, we are going to be transformed in our soul as well. And we need to allow our lives to be the work of putting to death the old man, putting to death and denying ourselves our old nature, so that the life of Christ in us can start to rule in and through our thinking and our emotions and our will. We bend our will to the will of the Father. Even Jesus did that in the garden. He said, nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. Justified, sanctified. Now what about our body? What's going to happen here? See, when Jesus died on that cross, He paid the price for our sin that was residing in our body, our sin that's residing in our soul, and our sin that resides in our spirit. And He paid for it in full. That means all of it will be restored. Our spirit is made new, our soul is to be made new, but our body is also going to be new. But here's how this works. You see, our physical body right now, because of the results of sin, is going to go into the grave. It's going to go into the ground, and it's going to die. But in that resurrection future, when Christ returns, we are going to receive a new glorified body. And that is the doctrine of glorification. And so justification, sanctification, and glorification, that we are going to be made new in every way possible. That's what it means to be a Christian. Renewed in spirit, being renewed in our soul, and one day to receive a new body. What great news! So here's what you can do with this. Would you practice telling this story and using this illustration with somebody? You know, maybe you can do this with your family member, your spouse. Maybe you can do this with your life group. You can definitely do this with your kids as well. Explaining it to kids will really test whether we understand what this wonderful story of being redeemed and saved by Christ is going to be about. And I pray that as you do this, you too will experience the wonderful blessing of what it means that we get to partner with God, to go into all the world, to preach this good news of what it truly means to be a Christ follower. that we would still commit to the sanctifying work of the Holy Spirit in us. As you do all of this, may you make disciples wherever you are.